Oh my god. Hi bestie, long time no see. I hope you guys are doing well. I haven't talked to you in a while. It has been a long time since I've talked to you. And I've promised you on my social media to share with you a little new tutorial which I'm very excited about. It is something very crazy. I think it's one of my craziest projects that I've ever crocheted. I'm talking about this very distressed and crazy hoodie. One of my favorite pieces. I love the color palette. It's a perfect project for scrap yarn. This is how it looks from the front and this is how it looks from the back side. And without further ado, let's jump into the tutorial. Alright, regarding the materials, I'm using for this project 3 different types of hooks. Mainly, I'm using an 8mm hook. The hook that I'm using for all of the main crocheting parts. For one of the stitches, I actually switched out the hook and used a 50mm hook. And for the ribbon, I'm using a 3.5mm hook and a DK soft cotton yarn. Besides that, you're gonna need some scissors, a wool needle to clean it up, and multiple various yarn. I'm gonna show you. I picked out different chunky yarns, also fuzzy yarns, but normal cotton yarns. The chunky yarns are more like acrylic yarns. First of all, before we start actually, you're gonna go into your wardrobe, pick out a sweater that fits you very well or where you really like the fit of the sweater. When you picked out your sweater that you want to use as your reference, this whole crochet tutorial is a trust the process project. So that means this is going to be a whole mess. There is no pattern. You just add different patches of different stitches to one of your patches. It doesn't matter which side. You just add, and in the end you make it fit to your sweater reference. That means you add, put it onto your sweater, see which sides are just missing, pieces are missing, parts are missing, and just add to these parts to make it fit to your sweater. In the end, we're gonna clean everything up by sewing the excess yarn into the project and also adding the ribbing in the end. Don't be scared. What I did is I chained up 30, started with my first big patch. I wanted to have a big patch for the front. So I chained up 30 with a soft cotton yarn using my 8mm hook. When I've done that, I went back on the row doing a single crochet and added a new type of yarn, which is one of the chunky acrylic yarns that fits the colors well. Went down the row with a single crochet again. When I'm at the end of the row, I close the last chain or close the last stitch with both yarns. And then I just started to crochet the next row with the normal DK soft cotton yarn again. In order to show you the distressing stitch that gives you little holes in your crochet pattern, when you start right off with the next row, which is our 4th row, you do 4 single crochets, and when you add the 4th stitch, you pull a long end, a long loop, and jump 3 stitches. That means we are skipping 3 stitches and jump directly into the 4th stitch by pulling the long loop as long as those 3 stitches are to connect it, and just do a single crochet on the next stitch. And you go on for this row and repeat that process. At the end, I think there should be 2 single crochet stitches left. And then you just simply chain up 2, turn your work, and go back in your row. So I keep going for 3 rows with the same pattern. That means 4 single crochets, long loop, skip 3, go into the 4th one, and do 4 single crochets again. And in order to close it, you just simply add the skipping stitches to your long loop from the row below. So in case, for example, we want to close the hole again and just have a simple row of only single crochets, we just add the holes with 3 single crochets that we have just skipped in the rows below. And that is simply how you just close it. And what I did then is I added a couple more single crochet rows of that color, then changed back to a chunky yarn, go back to that one color, and did the whole thing all over again to have it a pattern. I did that for multiple rows to have a big square. To have a little checkup, we just added this patch, finished that patch, and we're gonna move on to the next part of the sweater, which is going to be this patch. So what I did is I added on the right side of my pattern the new chunky color, which is the beige. And in my case, it is 20 stitches, and I did 20 single crochet stitches. So I attached the yarn with a knot to the pattern and just simply crocheted 20 single crochets. And now I switched the yarn into the delicate yarn. Used the same crochet needle to make it even more distressed and more stretchy, more loose in the end, which is fun. We continue working with the white yarn for 5 rows. This pattern looks a little bit like a houndstooth stitch, and in between we have the white loose stitch. So we just added 5 rows, and then we're gonna attach the beige chunky yarn again. Every second stitch I went back into the second row of the white delicate yarn and worked our single crochets a little bit down in the row. We're gonna continue that pattern by just adding a single crochet to the last row, then a single crochet to the second row, a single crochet to the last row, and a single crochet to the second row again, and repeating that process all over the row. When we done that for one row, we just turn our work and add back the delicate white yarn. And this is like a very cool stitch technique that you can use if you want to combine delicate yarn with chunky yarn and have a little pattern in it. So this is the project where you can be creative in your stitches, in the color palettes, and in the hook size. This is like a very trust the process project. Next up, I just added the long pattern over here. For this pattern, I added different types of hooks. I started with a normal single crochet of 2 rows with a 8mm hook. So these are approximately 50 stitches, 50 single crochets. And then I added the new color, which is a DK soft cotton yarn, a dark blue DK soft cotton yarn, and used a 50mm hook in order to just do a single crochet into the back loop. So this dark blue pattern, as you can see, is a little bit more loose. It has bigger holes in it. So I used a 50mm hook for this row only and just did 2 rows of single crochets with the 8mm hook in the light blue yarn again. So we do 2 rows of single crochets with the light blue, 1 row with the single crochet with the dark blue, and 2 rows with the single crochet of the light blue again. These are like the 3 techniques that I've used for the whole sweater, using it in different colors and different sizes. In order to finish the front and the back, I just laid my patch onto my reference sweater, added more patches to it. Your front part needs to be cut out a little bit more or cut out a little bit bigger for the crew neck part than your back part, which looks like that. So in order to understand the process of how to build a sweater, I'm gonna blend in a little pattern in here. So where you can see there's like the front down here, the back up here, and the sleeve parts at the sides. And that is like the pattern that you can use as overview for your project. So what we're gonna do is we have the front and we have the back, which are actually the same piece. The only thing that is like a little bit different is that the front part of our sweater is a little bit more cut out for the neck part than the back part. But other than that, they should be, when you lay them on top of each other, they should have the same length and the same size. So they should match up in their size. Next up, we're gonna add the sleeves. We're gonna need 2 sleeves for the sweater. In this overview, you can see that the sleeve starts small and grows bigger in the size. And this is very important because when you fold it, it should add and match your sweater. If you use your sweater as reference, you wanna add the sleeve front and the back as one piece and just fold it in order to get and create your sweater. I added the same or used the same technique. I just started randomly with a certain patch and make it fit to the other sleeve. I really like this part of the sweater. I combined a delicate yarn with a chunky yarn again, and I really like the color combination that I've used on the sweater. I started right off with a chunky yarn, crocheted 2 rows with a single crochet, and then added a delicate color, which is a beige color, with the same hook. Just added 3 rows of single crochets only in the back loop to make it stretchy. If you work only in the back loop, you get a very stretchy pattern in the end. Move back into the new color with a dark blue and a turquoise with the chunky color again. And repeat that whole pattern for the sleeve and added a different type of pattern at the end for the other side of the sleeve. So you're gonna need 2 sleeves in the end. They should match up in the size as well. That's basically it. Next up, we're gonna need some ribbons. So we need some ribbons for the wrists, 2 of those, and 1 ribbon for the hip, and 1 last ribbon for the neck, which we're gonna add at the very end. For the ribbing, I chained up 15 using a 3.5 millimeter hook in a DK soft cotton yarn in the color beige. This is like a beige gray, but I see it as beige. And turned my work, skipped the first loop, and did a single crochet for the first row. We are going back with 15 single crochets in the first row, chain up 2, and turn our work for row 3 and only work into the back loop with a single crochet. Now we're going to add rows to our ribbing by only working into the back loop with a single crochets as soon as it fits around our wrists. I repeated that pattern for 34 rows. Then I stopped crocheting because that is the perfect length for my wrist. And I did that same thing to the other wrist ribbing as well. And for the ribbing for the hips, I did that the same thing. So I chained up 15. I did 144 rows to make it fit around my waist. I think it's the waist ribbing. Why do I say hip ribbing? It's up to you. I mean, you have a different size, but for me, it was the perfect size for my waist. Next up, we have the finishing up part process. So we have the ribbing ready, we have all the parts ready. Now we have to just clean them up and sew them together to one piece. I cleaned up all parts by just weaving in the excess yarn into the project. Before we sew everything together, even the ribbing, you have to decide which side of your sweater should be the inside and which one should be the outside. You need to lay all the parts flat on the ground, the messy side, the not beautiful side, facing upwards. So what I do first is I'm going to attach the wrist ribbing to the sleeves. The sleeves length is a little bit longer than my wristband and I want to have it cuffed in the end. I have to stretch the wristband and attach it by simply sewing it together. And afterwards, I attached the front and the back together to one piece. That means both shoulder parts sides go on top of each other and sew everything together on both sides. We're not closing the sides yet. After that, I attached the sleeves. You're going to repeat that on the other side. Make sure that the center of the sleeve of the other side is also matching the center or the shoulder part of your front and back part of your sweater. And yeah, you just simply weave in with your wool needle and tie a knot at the end and hide the excess yarn. When you've done that, you have one long, I think you can call it a poncho or something like that. You can already try it on, but it's still missing the wrist, like the waistband, and you have to close it at the sides and down your sleeves. So what I did next is I folded, sewed together the sides. When you sewed everything together, we are going to attach the waistband next. But before we do that, we're going to turn our sweater inside out. Then we're going to take our waistband, lay it flat on the beautiful side of our sweater. We simply sew it on, and at the end we fold it over. So the seam of our, like the sewing seam that we just worked on, is gonna be facing the inside. I added a little neck ribbon as well to finish it off, and you simply attach your yarn. I'm using a 3.5mm hook again, and I chained up 5, turned my work, skipped the first hole, and did 4 single crochets into the chain up that we just did of the 5. When I ended the row, I attached it to the next stitch of our neck cutout. Chained up 2, turned my work, and did 4 single crochets into the next row. Then we're gonna turn our project, chain up 2, and work back the row, 4 single crochets again, only into the back loop. And now we're gonna attach it with a slip stitch, but not to the next stitch, only to the next stitch that comes after that next stitch. So every second row, we're gonna attach the neck ribbon to our neck part. You work your whole neck ribbon around your sweater. And when you're done your neck ribbon and have everything put together, you are simply done with your sweater. And now comes the final result. Alright Bessie, that was the whole tutorial. I hope you like this little sweater. I can't wait to see what you guys gonna do with it, and I hope that was kind of helpful in the end. I really like this Trust Your Process sweater. It is so much fun, and it was scary at first, but I'm very glad that I finished it, and I absolutely love that outcome. I can't wait to be back in the next video. I'm working on a rug right now, which is gonna be a cool kitchen rug, and I really want to do a YouTube video about it, so I might be back soon, and I can't wait. I love you guys, and I hope you have a good night, good morning, good evening, whenever you're watching this video, and I'll be back soon. Bye bye, I love you, bye bye, I'm out.